Hi, art journalers. Welcome back. It's been a while. I am planning on probably posting about a video a week. I'm back to teaching online, and that's consuming a lot of my time in a good way. Happy to be connected to my students in my 4-5 blend class, but art I still need to do. So today I was planning on having us do something like creating these Cairns, and that's spelled Cairn. And Cairns are basically impermanent man-made structures made out of rocks, and people go out, and my mom does this. She lives right on the river, and finds rocks to balance on top of each other and builds a stack. The reason why I chose this activity to do in our art journals is because I think it's a beautiful symbol for self-reflection, for finding balance in times when things seem like they're in such disarray. So you can do this either in your art journal, which I've done this sample. You can also do this on a separate piece of paper. You can, if you don't have paints, I'm going to be working with watercolor paints today and some pencils, paint markers and all that. But if you don't have watercolor paints, you can certainly do collage where you cut paper out into rock shapes and balance them on a blank page. You could also find one of your pages in your journal where you had prepared a background, and that would look really great if you're doing collage. And make sure that you are creating contrast by, if I'm doing it on pink background, then I'm going to choose a darker color so that it pops and that it's more interesting to the eye and it's not blending in. But today I'm just going to demo how I do this with watercolor. And so these are just a couple of samples that I did. And I decided to add words of inspiration on some of my rocks in my cairn. You can do whatever you want. You can decorate them, kind of like Easter eggs. You can write words of inspiration. I really like this one here, how it looks realistically balanced, but this activity, I'm hoping, is as you're building your rocks, you are actually considering whether or not it visually looks balanced, and it's really going to pull your attention right to the page, all of your focus. And again, that's a nice break for a mind that is spinning, especially with anxiety like myself. All right, well, let's get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take, so I did this in my art journal, but I'm going to put my art journal aside right now. And I'm going to grab this blank piece of paper. And what I like to do, now what you can do is look online and look up cairns and get some inspiration images. Or you can just start off, and I'm using a water-soluble pencil. I'm just going to start lightly sketching my grounding rock, and then I'm going to sketch a rock on top of that. Now, looking at this, it makes me think it's going to tumble over, so I need to balance that weight with a little bit more heaviness over here. Maybe I need to add something up there. And then do this, and then let's have a little rock shape up here. Okay, water-soluble pencils mean that when you apply water, the line will disappear. You don't have to do that. You can use a pencil. Just sketch really lightly. Then I'm going to go in and wet my brush, and I'm actually going to start off by wetting the paper. This technique, and you can see the water-soluble pencil starting to blend. It's already adding depth. Now, I kind of like this, and I may not need watercolor, but I'm going to add watercolor today to model it for you. So this technique in watercolor is called wet on wet. Essentially, you're wetting the paper, and then you are applying the watercolor. And I'm just kind of blending a little bit. Now, don't use a ton of water. I'm not going to go deep into watercolor techniques in this art journal workshop. But I will eventually have some classes up where I will go more in depth to the techniques and things. So be watching for that if that's what you're interested in. Okay, so I've got my first rock with just a light wash of watercolor. Now, something else I want to show you. If you happen to have color crayons, pull out a white color crayon. If you don't, what I did was I broke up this tea light candle and it's just wax. Because the color crayons are essentially wax. And we're looking for something wax-based. What I'm gonna use today is this China marker, which is by Sharpie, and it's a wax-based marker, but you can also use the wax from the candle. These lines were created. So I'm going to show you first how to do some wax resist. So I'm thinking, what words do I want to put in here? I am going to do shine your light. And so I am going to write shine with this wax base. You can't really see it. What the wax is going to do is resist the watercolor. And again, a color crayon is perfect for this. I don't happen to have crayons, believe it or not. So, but I have some other things. But I also tried it with the candle, and it worked fine. So I'm writing some inspirational words or a saying, and I'm gonna block out those sections before. It's important before you do the watercolor. Now I know I started down here, but notice that I did not apply watercolor before I put the wax-based marker in. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back to my watercolor, and that's all of the words that I'm gonna do. Now what you can do, you can also, some rocks have lines on them, and you can draw in lines. You can draw dots. I'm gonna draw some lines here, and that will resist the watercolor. All right, thinking of balance, not only are we looking for balance in our shape, maybe we're looking for balance in color. And so this technique here, notice I did not wet the paper first. This is wet on dry. That's another watercolor technique. And you could probably start to see how the wax is resisting the paint. That's gonna hold my rock here. Kind of looks like an Easter egg. Maybe you decorate eggs like this by drawing them. And I wanna do something a little bit lighter. So I'm playing with color, and maybe you're thinking about balancing with colors. You see that wax is resisting the paint. It's gonna shine through. I like how soft it is. It doesn't matter if you do wet on wet or wet on dry. It's totally up to you. I would recommend, if you're interested in exploring watercolor techniques, just experiment with both and see what the differences are. And I would do that right in your art journal, and then take notes on what you notice. I was blending some of the other color in. That will create unity. I'll have a series on the basics of design coming up here, which unity, balance, all those things will be on there. Isn't that cool how the wax just resists? Now again, color crayons are perfect for this. You do not need a China marker. I'm only using the China marker because I didn't have crayons and I was looking all over for color crayons. So I've got something really light. It's dark in here. I'm thinking, do Do I want to go? I may come back to this and darken it up. But let's get this. It's kind of like magic, but it does look like an Easter egg. And they do give you, and actually, if you do dye eggs and you get one of those packs, keep that wax crayon and use it for your art journals. Don't throw it away. Okay. I'm really liking the softness of these colors. I can always go back and add more to make them darker, another layer. Once it's dry, it's hard to take the paint off and lighten it, but while it's wet, you can do that. Okay, I'm gonna darken where these rocks touch each other to add shadow and depth. And then I am gonna let this dry, and I'm gonna pull over one that I did previously and show you some techniques that you can use. And I'm gonna add some, ground it. I'll darken this later. Okay, so I'm gonna push this aside and let it dry completely. You wanna let the watercolor dry before you come back to it and add colored pencil, anything else on top of it. So here, that's not the one. Okay, here's one that I did earlier, and I went back with paint pencil and I had to let this dry, but I can do a paint marker and I can make the words color. You can use colored pencil if you want, if you don't have paint markers. I can use Sharpie if I want the words to really contrast against the colors. But if I want to go back and, so as you can see on these are pretty light, but once it dries, that paint will get a little bit lighter. But you then can go back and use colored pencils to add shading around. I would go around the edges to add depth. You can make those colors of the paint a little richer if you don't want to go back with another layer. You could get really funky with your colors and maybe add an experiment with colors that you normally wouldn't use. Again, if you want unity, spread some of those same colors out among your composition so they show up in different places. Another technique you could use is, this is an 8B pencil. So if it has an H, that means the lead is really hard. If it has a B, it's really, really soft, and it's going to blend a lot darker. So you could go back with a pencil after it's dry and darken the edges. You could do that with a ballpoint pen. You could do that with a pencil. You could do that with a darker pencil. You could use your finger for something that's a B, a lead that's B. It's gonna blend pretty well if you want to smooth it out. It's really your taste, and I encourage you to make more than one of these and experiment. I like to darken where things are touching, adding a little extra shadow and maybe around the edges. So I'm gonna use my finger again to shade. And then I will maybe darken the edges around this. And I can work this as much as I want, as little as I want. Keep playing with it until you feel it's done. And that's your decision as an artist. You can go back and add, I feel like I want to add some blue here. Add some color to the rocks. And I feel like I need to separate that a little bit more. So I'm gonna, not only does it need a shadow, but it needs a line here. And I like to stay loose. I like my pieces to be more on the loose side rather than technical and tight, but that's my, that's just how I do it. It doesn't mean it's the right way or the best way. It's, again, you have to create what your intuition is asking you to do. And so I can keep working this until it becomes something like this. So I will go back and use colored pencils to work these. As you can see, it's looking a little lighter. So I will go back and add colored pencil. I will add graphite. I can use my gel pen to add dots, add little features. I can use my gel pen to actually write on the rocks after the fact. You can do it anyway. Just experiment. Have fun. And please post. I love seeing your posts of the work that you're doing. Work at your own pace. I'm not pressuring you to work at the same pace that as I post videos. But it's fun. It's exciting to see that you're following along. And even if you don't, thanks for just following and seeing everybody else's work. I hope everyone's staying healthy, and I will see you in about a week. All right.